Most people go through life believing that the universe is something distant, something mechanical, a giant machine floating in cold space, handing out accidents and coincidences with no intimacy whatsoever. And so they speak to existence the way one writes letters to a government office. They say, "Please, I need this amount of money. Please give me what I want, and I promise I will change. Please remove my struggle, and then I will be happy." But the strange thing is, the universe was never listening to the words in the first place. It listens to something far more ancient than language. It listens to your state of being. Now that is a very peculiar thing to realize, because language itself is a relatively recent invention. Human beings spoke long after they felt, long after they feared, long after they loved, long after they trembled beneath thunderstorms and stared at the stars in silence. And what this suggests is that consciousness communicates before vocabulary ever appears. A flower does not speak. A mountain does not speak. The ocean has no dictionary. And yet they express themselves perfectly. So when people ask, "How do I speak to the universe?" what they are really asking is, "How do I align my inner state with the reality I wish to experience?" Because whether you realize it or not, you are already speaking to it constantly. Not through sentences, but through attention. Attention is prayer. Attention is energy. Attention is the great invisible currency of existence. You become psychologically inhabited by whatever you consistently attend to. And this is why two people can walk through the exact same world and live in completely different realities. One man notices betrayal everywhere. Another notices beauty. One becomes consumed with fear. Another becomes enchanted with possibility. Now, the world itself has not changed. What changed was the lens through which consciousness organized experience. You see, reality is not merely what happens to you. Reality is what you notice. And that is an extraordinarily important distinction, because most people imagine they are victims of experience, when in truth, experience is continuously being filtered through the spotlight of awareness. Imagine yourself sitting in a dark theater. Wherever the spotlight moves, the play appears alive. The moment the spotlight leaves, the actors vanish back into darkness. Your consciousness functions in much the same way. Thoughts are constantly appearing, millions of them, most of them random, conditioned, recycled, mechanical. But the thoughts themselves possess very little power. What gives them power is your identification with them. The moment you cling to a thought emotionally, you breathe life into it, you feed it, you animate it. And then people wonder why certain fears seem to follow them for years. Well, because they have unknowingly worshipped them. They have prayed to anxiety with devotion, fed resentment like a sacred fire, repeated inner narratives so often that the mind begins mistaking repetition for truth. And the universe, if we may call it that, simply reflects the pattern back, not as punishment, but as resonance. You see, the universe behaves much more like an echo than a judge. It does not sit upon a throne deciding who is worthy. It simply mirrors vibration. And this can be difficult for the ego to accept, because the ego wants reality to be happening to it. But consciousness is participatory. You are involved in the shaping of experience every moment through what you energize. In Buddhism, there is this understanding that attachment is the root of suffering. Now, many people misunderstand this and assume it means you should own nothing and suppress desire and become emotionally numb. That misses the point entirely. Attachment means unconscious fixation. It means allowing the mind to become possessed by phenomena. And once possessed, you no longer observe thoughts. You obey them. You become hypnotized by your own attention. And modern society is extraordinarily efficient at hijacking attention. Entire industries compete for it. News channels monetize fear. People become trapped in cycles of comparison, stimulation, anxiety, noise, not realizing that every moment of attention is an energetic agreement. Every reaction says, yes, more of this. That is why what you repeatedly react to tends to persist psychologically in your reality. Not because the universe is cursing you, but because consciousness magnifies what it continuously rehearses. And once you begin seeing this, once you begin observing your own mind carefully, you discover something rather shocking. You discover that attention itself is creative. Not creative in the childish sense that you can instantly manifest castles and Ferraris from thin air, but creative in the sense that attention shapes perception. Perception shapes emotion. Emotion shapes behavior, and behavior shapes destiny. And so, the universe is listening, constantly. But not to the performance of your words. Instead, it listens to what you embody, what you rehearse emotionally, what you secretly believe to be true. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is that most human beings never truly examine what they are broadcasting. They walk through life unconsciously embodying fear, while verbally asking for peace, embodying scarcity while asking for abundance, embodying self-rejection while asking to be loved. Now there's the contradiction. The universe responds not to the mask, but to the underlying music beneath it. And so the real question becomes, if reality mirrors consciousness, then what exactly is your consciousness saying? What exactly is it that directs consciousness? What determines whether your energy flows toward fear or beauty or despair or love? And the answer is astonishingly simple. Attention. Attention is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life, because people think of it as something passive. But attention is not passive at all. Attention is participation. Whatever you consistently pay attention to, you enter into a relationship with. Now think about that carefully. Because most people imagine they are merely observing life. They say, I'm just worried. I'm just thinking about problems. I'm just reacting to what's happening. But consciousness does not make such neat distinctions. To continuously focus upon something is to feed it psychologically. Attention is nourishment. In the same way sunlight nourishes a plant, awareness nourishes mental reality. And this is why fear grows stronger the more obsessively it is examined. People often believe that if they analyze anxiety long enough, they will eventually escape it. But what usually happens is the opposite. They become hypnotized by it. Like a man trapped in quicksand, every frantic movement pulls him deeper. And this is why ancient spiritual traditions placed such enormous emphasis upon guarding awareness. Not because the world is evil, but because consciousness becomes shaped by whatever it repeatedly embraces. The Buddhists understood this. The Hindus understood this. Even Christian mystics understood this in their own symbolic language. Where your attention goes, your soul follows. Now this becomes especially dangerous in modern life, because modern civilization is fundamentally an economy of stolen attention. Everywhere you look, something is begging. Notice me. Fear this. Desire that. Compare yourself. React immediately. And most people never realize how deeply their inner world is being programmed by unconscious repetition. A person wakes up, checks alarming headlines, absorbs outrage, compares their life to strangers, fills the nervous system with noise, and then wonders why peace feels inaccessible. Well, of course it does. Their consciousness has become fragmented into 1,000 competing voices. You see, the mind is absorbent, very absorbent. It takes the shape of whatever environment it remains immersed within. Put a human being in an atmosphere of constant fear, and eventually fear begins feeling normal. Put them in endless comparison, and insufficiency becomes identity. The terrifying thing is that most conditioning does not occur consciously. It occurs rhythmically, through repetition, through emotional reinforcement, through habitual attention. This is why entire lives can become organized around invisible assumptions people never chose deliberately. A person who repeatedly says, "Nobody values me," begins scanning reality for evidence. And because attention is selective, the mind starts filtering experience accordingly. Suddenly, every ignored message feels personal. Every rejection feels cosmic. Every silence becomes proof. Not because reality objectively confirms the belief, but because attention edits experience. You are always seeing through a lens. Always. And the ego desperately wants to believe its lens is reality. But it isn't. It is interpretation masquerading as truth. Now this does not mean you should deny pain or pretend suffering does not exist. That becomes another form of unconsciousness. But the point is subtler than that. The point is to recognize that awareness itself has direction. You may acknowledge darkness without building a home inside it. That is wisdom. Because many people become emotionally addicted to certain states without realizing it. They rehearse old heartbreaks, old humiliations, old betrayals, again and again and again, as if the mind were continuously scratching a wound to ensure it never heals. And eventually, the personality forms around the injury. I am the abandoned one. I am the unlucky one. I am the anxious one. Identity crystallizes around attention. Now here is the strange paradox. The more attention you give the ego's suffering, the more solid the ego appears. Because the ego itself is largely a process of mental fixation, a repetitive narrative, a looping commentary. And without constant attention, it begins dissolving. This is why silence can feel frightening at first. When people sit quietly alone, they suddenly encounter the machinery of their own mind. And rather than witnessing it calmly, most people immediately reach for distraction, television, noise, conversation, entertainment, anything to avoid the raw encounter with consciousness itself. But if you remain still long enough, something remarkable begins happening. You realize that thoughts are not commanding you. They are merely appearing, like clouds passing through an open sky. Some dark, some radiant, some absurd, but none of them inherently possess authority. They only gain power when attention grips them tightly. And this realization changes everything, because now you begin understanding that attention is choice, sacred choice. Every moment you are deciding what kind of reality becomes psychologically alive within you. You are voting for worlds internally long before they manifest externally. And perhaps this is why so many spiritual teachers spoke about awareness with almost reverential seriousness. Because attention is not merely concentration. Attention is creation in progress. What you repeatedly attend to becomes emotionally believable.